Hello, welcome to the Writer's Craft here on Sparks 1524. I'm Nathaniel Miller. Got myself a new microphone here. The other one is still good. It's just a portable mic because I kind of got all this going when I was traveling as I bumped my mic here. So I'm slowly setting up my studio now with more permanent equipment. I still have the travel stuff because I still love a good road trip. But congratulations to myself and my viewing audience that I'm using a new microphone. Let me get my pop guard, otherwise known as a spit guard. Today we are wrapping up this series I've been doing in the Writer's Craft about retcons. Retcons are an inevitable part of writing. As soon as you sit down and start working on a story, you're going to have ideas happen during that story for further character and mythos development. Now, if you're writing a one-off novel, you're kind of golden because the singular nature of that project circumscribes what you have to do. You need to do world building for that one novel, and you're done. If you're writing for a TV show, or like myself, a series of novels using the same characters, inevitably you're going to have retcons come up during the process of writing the series over time. You'll think of things 5 years, 6, 7, 10 years down the line about the character's backstory and the world's backstory that you didn't think of when you established it. These can be both a great opportunity and a real crazy maker for a writer, depending on how you handle them. Ideally, it's because as the story develops and the character develops, you need to fit in new backstory elements. When we meet somebody in the real world, they don't know everything about us any more than we know everything about them. We can know them for years and still be learning new things about them. That's just the way it is with human relationships, no less in writing. What do you do though when that retcon you have possibly contradicts what's gone before? Well, the first thing I recommend, and it harkens back to part one of this particular series, record your information in some form that works for you. I like outlines and timelines and even bullet lists. You might prefer a narrative summary. You might prefer using a voice recorder to record your backstory so you've got a record of it. However works for you, use that, but just make sure it's a system that allows you to refer back to it quickly and easily. Next up, the retcon itself. This is a joy and a burden. It's a joy because if ideas are coming to you for your characters and your backstory, it means the story is still alive up here in your head. It's still a living thing that's growing and breathing and has life to share with your audience. Some retcons are easy. You think of something for your character or your world's backstory that is relevant to the current project you're working on. You look back at your continuity and realize that you've never mentioned this. You have nothing covering that particular time period in the past, so it could just slot right in there. No harm, no foul. Everything's golden. What if your great idea, though, contradicts something that you have previously published? How do you handle that? The first thing you have to do is ask yourself as a writer, is this retcon actually necessary to the story? If it's not necessary, if it is not something that truly advances the narrative or your character's arc in a meaningful way, then I would simply recommend scrapping it. If it's not something that's truly meaningful, why are you going to put that much work into it? Still your choice, but that's my recommendation. However, what if it is really a great idea, but you can't immediately find a logical way to slot it into the narrative history without wrecking something? Now you've got to make some hard choices. The first choice is the one I just mentioned. Consider again, is it worth it? Maybe it's a great idea that would be better applied to a different character. Maybe not. Maybe there's just no way to put it in without wrecking your continuity. You have to make that call. But whatever you do, I strongly advise you to make sure it is narratively logical. That means it fits into the continuity and the story seamlessly. Your reading audience or your viewing audience, if you're writing for TV, invest time and emotional energy into these stories. We owe it to our audience to treat that with respect. And that means not blowing it up all in one ill-conceived idea just because that idea at the moment is new and shiny. One character, really the first major retcon that happened in Western literature actually happened with Sherlock Holmes. Now, back in the late 19th century, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was getting tired of writing Sherlock Holmes, so he killed him off in a story called The Final Problem. What came next was astounding and unprecedented in history. Londoners, Britain in general, but Londoners in particular, all but went into official mourning for the loss of Holmes. In fact, Conan Doyle received a letter from a woman and she opened it writing, "You brute." She was so angry about the loss of Holmes. It was the first time in Western cultural history that a fictional character had become so ingrained in a culture that that character's death actually impacted the culture. A few years later, Conan Doyle both needed money. We all need to make a living, no different back then. But people were also clamoring for more Sherlock Holmes stories. So he wrote The Hound of the Baskervilles, which was explicitly set before Holmes's fictional demise, or Holmes's demise, excuse me, the fictional Holmes character. Anyway, a little later, though, he wrote The Empty House. And this story brought Holmes back to life. This had never been done before. To explain it in story, he simply had Holmes say, "I faked my own death." Because Holmes had already been established for years as being a brilliant man, a absolute genius with tactical and strategic skills far surpassing most people, and an ability to think through a problem faster than anybody else, it was easy to simply accept him saying, "I faked my own death." The character had the credibility to pull it off. Therefore, it worked, and Holmes came back. And in fact, Doyle wrote that into the larger narrative that Holmes had faked his own death in order to go underground for several years, dismantling a criminal organization. But because he worked that retcon into the narrative structure he'd established, specifically relying on Holmes's reputation for clever thinking, brilliant leaps of logic, the credibility of the character allowed the retcon to work. That's an example of how you can do a retcon and make it work. If you have good credibility with your audience, this is a great thing. It can work. It allows you new ways to expand the character and the narrative backstory for the universe because you're not constrained to what you published immediately in that moment or just in the past books. But it's something you have to do carefully. If you don't handle it carefully, these retcons can destroy your audience because the audience will get pissed off that they're paying for this and it's not being respectful of the characters or them. The audience doesn't want to invest emotional time and just emotional energy in a character or a story if that emotional energy is going to be repaid with a contemptuous, substandard, amateurish hack attempt at fan fiction. If you want to read a little more about how not to handle a character retcon, check out my written column. It's linked below in the description. We specifically look at and talk about Doctor Who in the 2020 episode, The Timeless Children, and how that retcon destroyed a 60-year-old, by this point, nearly 60-year-old TV show and franchise. It was handled badly. Dealing with retcons is an inherent part of your world building. Standing here right now, I've been developing my detective character, Isaac Shepard, for actually over almost 30 years. The present form that he is in, Isaac Timothy Shepard, the accidental detective that has shown up in Proud Lion, the Norfolk Murders, and my upcoming novel, And So It Begins, which comes out in April, is the product of a lot of years of work. But there's still ongoing development. While working on And So It Begins, I had a couple ideas for things that went back into the character's past, specifically his already established past playing baseball in high school. I'm releasing no spoilers here because, one, it's been established he played baseball in high school within the narrative. You already know that if you've read the books. Number two, I'm not giving away a spoiler because looking back at the retcon, it did not work. I had to make a hard choice because it was a great idea. Oh, as I bumped my new microphone. It was a great idea. Even I'm going to say it was a great idea. But no matter how I tried, I could not get it to logically fit into the narrative as established. To do so would be shoehorning in something that was contrived and would feel unnatural. And not only would I know that, my readers would pick up on that too, because our readers and our viewers, if you're a television writer, are highly intelligent people. They may not be communication experts like we are as writers, but they are experts in their own field. And even somebody who's not a communication expert knows when something sucks. Treat your readers with respect. Handle retcons carefully, but don't be afraid of them. These are golden opportunities to continue expanding a living narrative, adding to it and making it even richer. That retcon might just be the way you pull in a new reader because you come up with something that catches somebody's interest who wasn't ever into the genre. You never know. If you have any other questions, please feel free to hit me up. You can hit me up through the comments, or if you want to check out my written column, again, linked below in the blog, you can hit me up there. I'd love to talk with other writers about this. I'd love to hear your stories about how you handled retcons, and I can share some of mine. If you think this video is worth it, please hit that little like button, and don't be afraid to share it. If this helps another writer, then great. I thank you for your time, and if you didn't think this video was very good, I still thank you for sticking around this long. That speaks well of you, and I appreciate it. Until we meet again next time here on Sparks 1524, remember to always go and do great things.